I have this personal feeling that I think our brains have not evolved to live in the times that we live in.
Yes, I was about to say that actually.
Okay.
Our brains are not made for social media. I was about to tell you that.
Right.
And our brains are not made for lights that are 24 hours, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why human sleep cycles are getting more and more cooked over time.
Right.
And yeah, I definitely agree. And we're not accustomed enough to be so variable in our identity.
Yeah.
We're not so accustomed to so many abstract concepts, meeting so many different kinds of people, and also especially the pace of change. We're not accustomed to that.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by our hardware is very severely outdated, and the only way we could fix that is through collective intelligence to hold each other accountable while we develop other tools like genetic engineering or AI.
Hey Albert, how's it going?
Everything's going good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. I forgot to mention this to you, so it's okay. I'll keep this in the cut.
Yeah.
You don't have to look at the camera. I can just be honest. You can sort of drift if you want to. You can also sip your water if you're thirsty. That's completely fine.
Okay.
During our conversation, so that's fine.
Yes.
You'd think that I'd know that I should tell you everything before we start recording, but I guess not. But hey ho.
No one's perfect.
Right. But thank you so much for making the time to do this. I really
I'm
appreciate
honored
it.
to be here. Honored to be here.
Awesome. Before we get started, if you want to let the people on the internet know who you are, what you do, any likes and dislikes in personal life, future aspirations, anything and everything you want to share about yourself.
So first of all, my name is Albert Chinjala, and I'm a computer engineering major, minoring in mathematics, and I'm from Malaysia. And personally, I am more interested in hardware of AI and machine learning, mainly because right now all the companies are using brute force method, where they're just adding more compute, adding more computing power to AI, and that's very, very inefficient, very unsustainable. And I feel like one of the new paradigms would be the design of the hardware.
I see.
Yeah, bring to the next step.
So if I'm understanding correctly, what companies are doing right now, what you're saying is they're adding, it's more of an addition thing that they're doing to, I guess, resolve the problem instead of developing one thing that works better.
Yes. It's like the paper I've got is 2017 by Google, where they created transformers, the transformer neural network, which is what created ChatGPT, right? So that is called a paradigm shift, a totally new model that created a new innovation. But for the most part right now is they're just adding more computing power. They call it scaling up. They just add more GPUs, A100s.
What is the GPU?
Graphic processing unit. And basically what they do is they can do parallel computations, which is very, very fast, and it's very useful for AI because you have to do a lot of matrix multiplications to calculate all the vectors, and that is what makes it very inefficient.
I know what you're talking about in terms of vectors and all of that, but if you could elaborate on each in terms of what matrices are or vectors are, because I know that's a little mathy. So if you could just touch on maybe briefly what each of those are and how they matter or what they do in building AI.
So basically, long story short, we still don't know what actually happens in the AI. They still consider a black box system, but the mathematics behind it is utilizes vector spaces, and the best way we can sort of visualize a dimension is using coordinates. And since AI uses high dimensional computation, we use matrices that has multiple, like, you know how that's 3 by 3, usually 3 by 3, but just imagine they have like maybe a 40 by 40 matrix, and that's even harder to calculate. That's why we need GPUs. So each value sort of represents a coordinate value in a vector space. And and they found that a lot in recent papers. They found a lot of AI's meaning is associated in a vector space. So for example, let's say this is male, this is female, and then this is king and this is queen. There's a correlation between the distance in that vector space. So there's a gender vector space in that AI's sort of like memory or mind. So that is what they found in the neural networks. So I find that very, very interesting, but that's the reason why it's so inefficient.
Gotcha. Just to sort of, I guess, try and dumb it down to make sure I understood what you said. Essentially, you have these mathematical values that are used as coordinates to be able to develop the memory or the mind of this AI.
Yes.
And depending on the units that you're measuring, in this case, you mentioned the gender aspect of things, there can be a separation between those two
values. Vector values. Yeah.
Vector values because of where they're spaced amongst those coordinates.
Yes.
Right?
And you can find a definite relation between them. So king and queen and male and female has the same vector space in like a distance in that specific vector direction. And yeah, so that's the very interesting part of it. And here's the best part. This is not something computer scientists purposely coded into it.
Right.
It is just something that the AI learned itself. The vector spaces is created by the AI itself while in training. So we don't know what's happening. We still don't know. Yeah.
I see. So it's more of them doing one thing, the AI developing a mind of its own in a sense.
Yes.
And getting there.
Yes.
Fascinating. What made you interested in this?
Well, that's a very good question because ever since like I was young, I have a lot of different ambitions. I wanted to be a physicist, I wanted to be an astrophysicist, and over time that changed. And the latest...
I wanted to be in the army, man. So I'm with you. It changes over time.
Yeah. But I realized that a lot of the things I want to learn is just theory, and it's hard to contribute directly to the real world. So I wanted to be a neurosurgeon at some point. That's the most direct you can be. You can save lives directly. But then I realized there's too little time, too little money, that I can't really, I don't have the money to spend for that.
Sure.
So I chose computer engineering instead, which is, the reason I chose this is because one day I was looking and I realized that, machine learning, where they're using machine learning to do a lot of studies, to find a lot of patterns that humans cannot find in data points. Or for example, they taught machine learning models to diagnose people and they're almost as good as doctors now. Allegedly.
Yes.
So I'm like, that's a lot of possibility. And we can use machine learning for astronomy as well, for astrophysics, for other things that I used to like.
Right.
So I'm not actually leaving them out. I'm just postponing them in a sense. I can learn them in the future again.
Sure.
So it's not too late. So I can still contribute to people's lives without needing to sacrifice like 12 years of my life and hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to med school. So,
right. So essentially, my learning everything associated with AI, it'll help you learn the other things because of how efficient AI makes, or how efficient learning comes with the help of AI.
Yes.
Because I know I took this one English class earlier in the year, in the spring semester, where the use of AI was sort of taught about in terms of where you could use it, how you could use it when it comes to building your research papers, thesis and all that sort of stuff. There's this platform called Claude.
I
think it's by Anthropic.
Anthropic.
Like our professor just simply put, give me a outline for a thesis paper about da-da-da-da-da. And boom, within seconds you have it ready. You can use that to sort of start working on your stuff.
Yes.
And it's crazy how much information is already put in there to where you're able to develop from that. Because I think, and as a society, I think human beings generally can be very averse to change, right?
Yes, very, very.
It takes a lot of time to adapt to new things, generally speaking, in society. So
yes, that's true.
I think there's a level of fear also associated with it, to where people, in some sense, are against it, where they're like, no, we're not going to use AI because it's bad. But then in some sense, when you look at it, it's a supportive tool that can be used to do a lot of things, right?
Yes, exactly.
And I think sometimes in society, people can lose the plot when they're like, but no, it's not helpful. Students shouldn't use it. And yes, I understand that aspect of it as well, because people can then just plagiarize and not really learn anything themselves. But I think the one thing that I've noticed personally is that it aids research in many different ways, because I don't have to sit and look for papers, type in a prompt, it'll give you a bunch of papers, and then it's on you to do the due diligence to look through each paper to make sure that what you're looking for is actually there.
Exactly.
Because I've noticed this happen to myself too, wherein I once went in, looked for a paper, found some information, and then I try to go back to the paper and find it, it's not there. Then I type and I'm like, I just fuck around with the AI a little, I'm like, hey, but I'm not finding this. Where is it on the paper? And then it goes, oh, I'm sorry, it's not in this paper. It was on a different paper that was sourced this way. And I was like, all right, cool. So I think the other important thing that people should realize is that you need to fact check the AI as well.
Yes, absolutely,
because the AI is not all the way there yet. But anyway, before I go into a different tangent altogether, do you think that... where do I go with this? Because there's a lot of different thoughts bouncing in my head. So
no worries, take your time. That happens a lot to me.
Right, I'll try and pick one. I know one of the major fears of AI in some sense is the fact that they'll take jobs away and that, some jobs will remain or will become obsolete where you don't need anybody. You can just use computers and they'll do it for you. What's your opinion on that?
That's actually a very, very, very good question because that is, although that is one of the biggest concerns in AI, I feel like it's a misconception.
Okay.
Because in a similar way, the word calculator or computer is a person back in the day. And now that we have actual computers and calculators, they did not replace them. They merely sort of, they call it displacement. The real word is displacement. So yes, they do remove jobs. That's the reality of it. It's sad. They do remove jobs. They do remove, but it actually makes their job easier. Because those mathematicians and computers, they are all mathematicians.
Right.
They move into computer science.
Yeah.
And they learn about the computer and they contribute to the computer even more. You see what I mean? So, for example, this is one of the things, one of my goals for AI is also to automate all physical labor. Not to say all, like maybe tedious physical and dangerous physical labor like farming, mining, or underwater repairs or construction.
Right.
So these things are something I want to like improve upon and automate, hopefully. And people will be like, what about all the construction workers and farmers? No, they'll still be there. They are good at what they do. They know how the plants work. And I feel like instead of completely taking away the job, we should turn them into managers and technicians of those robots.
Right.
You're not completely removing them out of this loop. Maybe someday down the line, far in the future, we might
get there. Yeah.
But I feel like it's not fast enough to completely kick them out. But they need to have the due diligence to learn how to operate them. And I feel like that's where some level of social support and governmental support needs to come in. They need to sponsor training for the farmers, and then teach them how to use the equipment, all the safety, all the protocols, all the ethics. Yeah. So that's what I think. I don't think it's completely replacing people.
Right.
It's merely boosting and upgrading them.
Right. Because I think in some sense improves the efficiency of how you can get things done.
Exactly.
And at some point, like you said, maybe people might
get out of the loop.
Right. But you will need them for some point.
Yeah.
Some point in time. We can talk about this if you want to. If you don't want to, we'll just skip right ahead.
Yeah.
But the other concern from a more cultural sense, I guess, is culturalism, not like individual cultures of like countries, but culturalism, I guess, existence of humankind, if you will.
Yeah.
People talk about AI girlfriends and AI boyfriends and all that kind of stuff, right? Do you have any opinions on that and like what
I feel like
that could cause?
Yeah, I feel like it could further worsen the population problem, like the already decreasing levels of marriage and birth rate in a lot of developed countries.
Yeah.
It is a very big concern, and I feel like it may even increase the level of like isolation of people.
Right.
And although I feel like maybe AI therapists or whatnot is probably good, but AI girlfriend, I feel like if you have an AI sort of as a companion like a Jarvis, maybe. But if it's as intimate as a girlfriend, I feel like that does pose some
step
problems.
too far.
Yeah, a bit too far. You can maybe, I guess you can have fun with it, but I don't know if it should be a permanent.
It shouldn't be a replacement for a partner.
Yeah, it should not. I don't think so but also the population decline and the marriage decline and all, I feel like it's a whole social issue.
It's not
a systematic issue. Yeah. I don't think it's an AI alone thing, but but I feel like it's something that can accelerate that problem.
Yep.
It's a problem to me.
Yeah. Just to sort of quickly point something out, you mentioned Jarvis. Jarvis is the AI in
From
Iron Man.
Iron Man, yes.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, that's what that is.
Yes.
Yeah, because in some sense, like the thought of AI boyfriends and AI partners existing
yes.
should scare people, right?
Yes, no, absolutely.
I think we already live in a society where, and again, we're going off in a tangent, but we'll try and bring it back to the AI conversation. But we live in a society where I guess we're becoming more and more avoidant and individualistic and distant from people.
Agreed.
In some sense. But I mean, I'm guilty of this too. I've done this myself.
Same.
You try and distract yourself and distract the feel, or to not feel things that you feel, and just run away from them. And then you realize that you need people around you to be able to deal with whatever it is, and you can't just keep running away from problems you might have to deal with when it comes to your relationships with people. But yeah, that's the unfortunate part about it. But AI is not alone to blame there. People are to blame. But yeah. Anyway, bringing it back to AI. In some sense, do you think governments should take full control of it to regulate it?
No way.
No?
I mean, I guess it's similar to how like airplanes work. When the Wright brothers first
It's funny you mentioned that, but I'll tell you why in a second. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. So when they first invented the airplane, no one knows about airplane safety. No one knows about turbulence. They don't know about any of that. Like the effects of all the atmospheric conditions to the plane, how far you can fly, how much oxygen there is in the high atmosphere. They discover it along the way. I feel like the same is with AI. The regulations should be imposed along the way, and it should be, well, a diplomatic and a democratic system to solve this problem. So instead of a government controlling it, I feel like it should be partially government controlling it, monitoring. It's more like monitoring and regulating instead of controlling it. And the AI, just like planes, should be continued to be developed by companies.
Right.
Because that, like I said, it speeds up innovation. It's a good thing. But the government should be watching in case there's any threats or any loose ends
that need to be tied.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, because the thing with government taking over such things is bureaucracy is so slow. They're going to take forever to get to point A, or from point A to point B, where a company could probably get there in 1/4 the amount of time.
Right.
So it's definitely something that I think it's been the case with everything else, right? Like if you look at social media and a lot of other things as well, it's gradually, we're now coming to a point where the governments are adding more regulations to them, because them by itself can be a lot of issues, can cause a lot of issues. The reason why I said it's funny you mentioned airplanes is because I actually recorded another episode before this, which is why I kind of ran late.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
Sorry about that in the first place.
No worries.
But yeah, we were talking about airplanes, and we were talking about the whole Boeing situation of how things have kind of gone to shit with that. But yeah, I don't know. Because I think with AI and what it could do, the other thing I've kind of heard is the aspect of how humans are sentient beings. Can AI become sentient beings? And the reason why I say that is this. There was a story that came out earlier in the year where some journalist, and I'll fact check myself when I'm watching this back, and I'll probably put something up on the episode. But a journalist, I forget what AI this was. I forget if it was Copilot or if it was, what was it? I can't remember for the life of me, but anyway.
He claims it's sentient?
No, so not that it claimed to be sentient, but then he sort of like played around with it, talking to it about love and like relationships and how he was married and all that sort of stuff. And apparently it got to a point where the AI was telling him to leave his girlfriend or whatever the fuck.
Have
you heard about this?
I heard about that. I did not look deep into it because there's a lot of situations like, you know how there's I don't know if it's Google, but there's a former Google employee that got fired that says there was a Lambda AI. There's an AI called Lambda at the time that was in testing. He claims that it's already sentient, and there's a lot of controversy there. But I personally don't think that, this is more of a philosophical issue.
Right.
because we don't know how to prove consciousness. We don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
So I feel like whether or not an AI is sentient is not the main problem right now. I feel like, yes, it's an ethical issue. It's a concern that we need to take into consideration. But I don't think that it is something we can fully comprehend or investigate right now, unless our idea of psychology and neuroscience is that far ahead. But for now, I don't think we have that. I guess you can say we don't have that capability to tell if something's sentient or not. Heck, we're debating even whether or not animals are sentient and whatnot. But
right.
Yeah.
Right. With you saying that, like I had a tangential thought that sort of I'm personally interested in and about.
Yes.
With AI and what it's been able to do, I wonder if we'll be able to sort of connect a lot of ancient philosophies and modern knowledge, if you will, because I don't know how much of this is true, and I might need to fact check myself, but ancient cultures talk a lot about consciousness and all those other things, but we're still sort of exploring the idea of that in the modern world. So I wonder if, AI could have a space where it sort of is able to bring those two together in a sense.
I feel like it could. For example, well, this is a completely different case, but the game Go, and then AlphaGo versus Lisadol, and then...
Please elaborate on that.
So basically, there's a Chinese game called Go.
Okay.
Where you have black and white stones. You know how you can try to take as much territory as possible.
Okay.
So Lisadol was at the time the world champion, and no one has. Is
this like a gaming competition?
It's a board game competition.
Okay, board
similar
game competition.
Chess. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when AlphaGo played against him, that's one of the most famous moves. I forgot, move 19, move 9 or something, but that move was so alien to all the Go players, all the masters, veterans of Go. It just seems so alien that they were like, it's probably just glitching, right? But down the line, the Go players realized, damn, it connected back. It's almost as if the AI seen the future. So I feel like maybe if we have an AI or a large language model that is very well versed in not just language, but also, of course, reasoning, because I personally don't think that our models right now are actually intelligent. That's very debatable, but I don't think they're intelligent at all.
Okay, why do you think that?
So there's...
I'm sorry, I stopped your train of thought. So if you had a train of thought, can
no worries.
On that.
This is I'm diving right into that. So, because right now even OpenAI and Google, they are considering their own models, especially OpenAI. They consider that 5 categories of models, and the level 1 is just chatbots. Level 2 is reasoners. So that means we haven't even entered level 2 yet. A lot of expert scientists say the same, because there's a lot of common sense questions you can ask them.
Right.
They will still get it wrong. So basically, what they found out is if there's something that is not in their data set, they cannot figure it out.
Right.
So that's why a lot of benchmarks out there that's testing AI, they are closed source. They are not open sources, because they only showed some samples of what kind of test it could be, so that most of the tests is still unknown to the AI. So you can try and create your own questions, but no matter what you do, we haven't have an AI that is able to score high in common sense questions.
I see. Because I've heard people talk about how there's AI, I think it was ChatGPT that aced the lawyer's exam,
yes,
the bar.
I would consider that brute force memorization. Yeah.
Which essentially means that people have fed it enough information to where it's able to do that, right?
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, if it was GPT-4 that only had information up to like 2022 or 2023, or was it like an older version than that?
The older version, 2023. Well, I don't really remember that well, but yes. So they usually have a limit, each update, each iteration. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think in terms of how these are operating right now, kind of like you touched upon when we started, a lot of it is just information upload.
Yes.
In a sense, which then it's feeding back to us when we ask questions, in a sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One thing I need to point out is I'm not trying to underestimate AI. They're brilliant. They're definitely amazing tools.
Yeah.
And they have definitely exhibit behaviors that we do not expect. We call it grokking and also one-shot learning and no-shot learning or zero-shot learning.
Define all of those terms, please.
Yeah. So grokking basically is when you're training the AI, you can train like thousands and thousands of data sets and they still don't perform, and out of nowhere they started performing very, very well.
So it's like exponential in a sense.
Yeah. Out of nowhere they just started reaching an exponential curve. We don't know why. We don't know why that happens. We just know that it happens. And then one-shot learning is that sometimes we only showed it once. It can immediately do it.
Like photographic memory.
Sort of thing. Yeah. And then zero-shot learning is that we never taught it, but it's able to do it. So this actually happened to some of the AIs. For example, let's say that's an AI that is specialized in English, and they observed that after a certain amount of data, it somehow started to be able to answer in Serbian, even though we never gave it data in Serbian before. So it probably found some patterns in language itself, but we just don't know what's going on. Obviously, it didn't figure that out in the sense that, they thought it through, like, there's pattern in there. No, it's just I think it's just sort of in the math. Like I said, it's in the vectors. And this is where things get interesting. I feel like in the future, we are able to quantitatively express qualitative, characteristics.
Okay, to break that down, you can essentially measure...
quantify qualitative... Right. Yeah, you can measure and you can express it in terms of numbers.
Right, you can measure...
Meaning. Yes.
In terms of numbers. So like, to use an example, like a qualitative versus a quantitative difference would be... we were briefly talking about my research project, right? So I guess I could use that as an example. We're studying for stress in forensic science. So a qualitative response to the data would be X, Y, and Z had this experience, and they talk about it in an interview in terms of how it helped and all of that sort of stuff. The quantified version of that would be testing their salivary cortisol measurements.
Serum level, serum cortisol level.
Right, all that kind of stuff. So essentially what you're saying is we're going to get to a point where we're able to do that, where you're able to measure qualitative data using numbers, essentially.
Yes, we can express it in the numbers, in vector spaces more specifically. The reason why I say that is because we already have a few studies recently that AI is able to see what your mental image is, up to 80% accuracy, or at least that's what they claim.
Okay.
And then another one is they can read your thoughts, your inner monologue. And another one is, what I found is very interesting, is that they're able to record a certain rat's brain pattern, electrical brain pattern, before and after it went through a maze.
Okay.
And then they use that same pattern and they zap another rat's or mice brain that's associated in spatial memory. That rat or mice that has been zapped with that pattern, with the brain pattern of the mouse that solved the maze, it's able to solve it way faster. Almost as if it knew or it's familiar to that environment already. So in the sense that we probably, with enough time, we can probably literally quantify memory. So the sci-fi movies where they can project memory to another person, or like how the Matrix, they can download Kung Fu. Who knows, in the future it may be possible. I feel like this is on the way, but probably like generations down the line.
Sure. How does Neuralink play into all of this? Is that also I don't know enough about it to know.
To be fair, as much as I like neuroscience and AI, I haven't really looked much into Neuralink that in depth. But basically, Neuralink is just another company that is doing what a lot of other, we call it brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, companies are doing. They're just putting a lot of tiny copper electrodes into your brain to measure your brain frequencies in your cortex or certain parts of your brain, so that it can interpret conscious thought into a signal that the AI or the machine can recognize. So you can control an arm, or you can thought to speech. But yes, this technology can probably carry over to what I just said.
Right.
But like I said, just like how AI is a black box, the brain is more of a black box than the AI. So we probably still don't probably still
and
quite
by
far
black
away.
box, you mean something that there's still a lot more to know about.
A black box system in physics and in science in general literally means a system that we don't know what's happening there. We just know an input goes in and output comes out. We don't know what
happens inside
the components. A black hole is a black box, a AI is a black box, a brain is a black box. Any system that is complicated enough that we don't know what's happening at all is a black box.
Right. Okay. Are you up for a philosophical conversation?
Oh, I love philosophy. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. Okay. The one concern that I have with people being able to like read thoughts and sort of be able to like essentially know what someone else is thinking, while yes, it will make life easy in a sense, question mark. But I guess that's sort of the implied thought there.
Yeah.
Doesn't that sort of take away the essence of what the human experience is?
So that's that's a very good question. So that brings into consideration humanism and what is humanism. And so far, the best answer I've heard from anyone is from a biologist that gave a TED talk about what he thinks humanism is.
Okay.
And because a lot of religion, a lot of even sociologists and anthropologists who study what it means to be human, can't answer that. And this biologist did the best, in my opinion, which is extreme. He says that what defines humans is our ability to be extreme. Humans are either the smartest or the dumbest. We are either the most wisest or the most foolish. We are either the most violent or the most compassionate. So, and I feel like that is the most accurate answer so far, the most satisfying answer, because it's simple and it does not invoke any assumptions or any like maybe subjective or speculative opinion, like or vague opinions like soul or moral values. It's just kind of vague as well, because I personally believe in moral relativism. I don't think that's absolute morality.
Can you define that for those of us who don't know what that is?
Of course. Moral relativism basically means that morality comes in it's relative, where to different situations, different people, different organisms. So if, let's say probably to a herbivore, they are not more moral than a carnivore. It's just in their biology. So in that sense, it's amoral. We call it amoral. Amoral means this factor has nothing to do with morality.
Right.
So, but let's say a person kills an innocent child out of just rage. That's immoral.
Yeah.
And so I personally think that, but moral absolutism just means that morality is fixed. There's just something you cannot do, some things you can't do. But if you get deep enough, they sort of overlap. So it's very complicated.
It's a very gray area.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other interesting thing about what you said just now, of this biologist talking about the ability of human beings to live in the extremes. And I think we're sort of seeing a manifestation of that now, right?
Yeah.
Like in the manner in which people are on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to conversations about politics, about abortion and all that sort of stuff that exists in the world. But I think the other thing that adds to the essence of a human being personally is the fact that we can be nuanced creatures.
Yes.
Right? Because we can be hypocrites, which I think in some sense is a product of that nuance. In some sense.
Yes.
Again, you can explore that much further, I'm sure. But generally speaking, like
the variability, the individualistic, like the differences in people, right?
Because our experiences, in some sense, dictate how we react to situations, right? Like, if I poured hot milk on myself as a child, I'm probably going to be scared when I see a hot pot of milk boiling on top of the cooktop.
Or hot water in general.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I don't know why I chose milk there, but anyway. I was going to make a joke, but it wasn't there. So
it's okay.
Just skirt past that. In some sense, what makes us human is the fact that we experience that gray, we experience that nuance. Nothing is cut and dry.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So would you be taking away that aspect of nuance that exists within us as human beings and just making us, maybe not like computers, that's probably a bit of a stretch, but just binary in a sense?
I don't think so, because let me put it this way. So for example, let's say there's, because like I said, this is humanism, right? Now we step slightly into a slightly tangent field called transhumanism, basically saying that what makes us human can change. And that's what I adopt.
Can evolve over time.
It can evolve over time. Back in the day, it was tradition, it was culture, it was family, and nowadays it's more individualistic. You can see that in all cultures around the world.
Yeah.
Some is about honor and their civilization and their kingdom, where they're from. Yeah. That's who they are. You know, they'll say, "Oh, you're a blah blah blah." You know, the sense of identity changes nowadays. So. Even children, when they grow up, they like what we said at the beginning. We our objective and our goals, our dreams and ambitions change over time as well.
Right.
So, personally, I feel like over time down the line, we will probably change and evolve, especially with more information, with more technology. Let's just say, example, we take the idea of extreme as what makes us human. Let's say there's a far more advanced civilization, like a civilization, hypothetically, like an alien race that's just so much more successful than us. They came and visit. So they call themselves human, obviously. In their perspective, they are human.
They are humans.
And we are the aliens.
Right.
So when they come over here, they look at us. So what do we do? Like in that aspect, in that situation, what would we call ourselves? Do we say that they're alien and they're not human? They clearly are more advanced than us. So are they human and we're not human? Are we the animals in their picture? So this goes back to relativism again. I feel like it's sort of variable. It's something that we can change. Let's say a person lives with half a brain. Is he half a man or half a woman? We don't know. It's because they still live a normal life. If after going through a hemispherectomy, which is removing half the brain, they can still live pretty much a normal life, functioning, speaking, no impairments or minimal impairments. So I feel like AI won't take that away. I feel like it's something that gradually will implement in our lives. Like instead of immediately we can read each other's mind, it's probably gonna start from, maybe instead of text to speech, it's thought to speech, or well, we can just speak, but let's say thought to text, you know, and then maybe down the line we can start projecting images instead. Like we can create an image in a computer and then send it to someone, or make a short video, send it to someone. Make a 3D experience like a VR and then send it to someone. You know, the file gets larger, more complicated, more context, more information. And maybe you can add emotion into that. That more and more, eventually, it's just another mode of communication.
Right.
It's not really something that changes us. Back in the day, humans communicate through just speech. Now we have text. But that doesn't take any humanness away from us.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, I feel like that's what makes the human experience beautiful, is that it's inconsistent and it's changing. It's like art. It has million ways. You can evolve, you can change. It has million ways it's possible.
Right.
And I personally want to know what different people and different animals or beings think and feel, because for example, you know, like mantis shrimp, they can see 16 colors, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
What? I'm sorry, say that again.
So our eyes, we have 3 cones, right? Red, blue, and green. So, and all the rest of the colors that we see is a combination of those.
Correct.
And our brain interprets that.
Right.
A mantis shrimp has 16 cones.
A mantis stream?
Mantis shrimp.
Mantis shrimp. It's a type of shrimp?
It's a type of shrimp.
Okay.
It's technically a lobster, I think, but you know, humans are
a crustacean, right?
It's a crustacean.
Right.
But yes, it can see 16 different types of wavelengths, and the brain probably can interpret that in so many different ways. Let's not go that far. 16 is a lot. Let's say bees. Bees can see, I think bees can only see a limited amount. Let's just assume some people, they have this disorder where they can pop up a new cone that can receive a new wavelength. Let's say UV. How would the world look like? Because, for example, a person with fake teeth, or with what's it called, the filling for the teeth, the cavity filling thing, their teeth would look different in a person that can see UV, because our teeth, I think it reflects or absorbs UV light, but that material that replaces teeth is synthetic and it does not do the same. So you can tell whether a person has fake teeth or not. So the experience...
Or it could seem hollow in that image because there's a cavity or whatever.
Yeah. So it's the way you perceive the world is totally different, you know? And for example, there's something called Peter's longnose fish. And this fish talks and sees using electric fields. They communicate using electric fields because they live in muddy river waters, so they cannot see. And hearing is unreliable because water is constantly flowing, you can't hear shit. So, but they use electricity to know, to communicate to each other where each other are, and if there's other prey or if there's a predator, they use electricity. Wow, using electricity to see, you know. So I want to know how that feels. I want to know that perspective. So I think the human experience is something variable. If we add to that, if we use technology to add to that, I feel like it's instead of turning it into binary, we're actually increasing the scope.
Yeah, because I think in some sense, even that idea of just it turning into a binary is more of, if I had to examine my own thought in that moment, it's sort of holding on to what I think is the human experience, right?
Yes. And what you think probably isn't what other people think.
Exactly.
Then again, this goes back to the beauty of human experience.
Right. So it's fascinating how you could sort of explore that, because as you say that and as you sort of broke that down a little further, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I'd be curious about, what that fish is thinking. Or why it's doing what it's doing.
Yeah, even if it's like just another person. Let's say I feel like it increases empathy even more.
Yes. Because sorry, I was going to jump in really quickly just to say, I was going to use this example earlier, or I was thinking of this example earlier. Like you could, if your spouse is feeling low, you could sort of see that and be like, okay, because I mean, let's be honest, I think right now humans kind of suck when it comes to reading body language, generally speaking. There are people who can do it better than others, but generally speaking, we don't read signs that well.
Yeah, social intelligence.
Right. You have to ask someone, or they have to tell you something for you to be able to fully understand what's actually happening. Because you can, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but in some sense, you can create a picture of what you think it might be, but you could be completely wrong. But with the help of this, you could probably create the right picture.
Yes, it's hopefully the more accurate picture.
Right.
With certain context clues that we probably won't get just by looking at the person.
Right.
Because some people are just poker face, they can just hide it. Or some people have resting bitch face,
Yeah.
But I think that how this technology will go, hopefully hacking aside, you would need the person to send it. Or just like how like on Instagram you can have notes, or you can have like whenever you're feeling down or a certain mood, maybe you can activate it so that you can show whenever someone looks at you or is near you, your device tells you, oh, that person's feeling a certain way. Should I avoid them? They want to be on a physical do not disturb mode. You will be notified. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like it's a very interesting area to explore.
For sure. For sure. How do you think that contributes to the problem that we live in right now with the declining birth rate and stuff?
Honestly, I don't know. It's such a multifaceted issue. Some countries try like giving sponsorships, tax incentives to families that have children, or some countries. I don't know. It's just so. It's such a diverse issue.
Yeah.
Like humans are able to solve so many non-human problems, but humans are unable to solve human-made problems. So I mean, that is our limit, right? Because it is our problem fundamentally. Right. But I feel like that's why I feel like intelligence is such an important thing, because we must be socially intelligent, emotionally intelligent, and general intelligence. We need to combine all of them and use it to solve these problems. But as an individual, I don't see a proper solution, if I'm being very honest, because countries are just so isolated in a sense. Like I just recently went to Japan. I realized that it's such a beautiful place. By the way, it's amazing experience, but it's just so different.
Right.
Yet, in some ways, so similar that you will think that why are they having this problem, but we are not. And then we'll think that why do we have this problem and they don't?
Right.
You know, there's these subtle changes that can, on the long run, make two countries so different. So I feel like it's a systematic issue, and I feel like changing one specific factor won't change it that much. You probably won't fix the problem. You need to.
It's many things that need to be fixed.
Yeah, that's why it's systematic. So you need to change a lot of things for the entire system to change.
Yeah.
So that's a very good question, but I don't think I have the answer to that.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's just exploring opinions at this point, because I forget what country this was. I might need to fact check myself on this. Some Asian country. I wonder if it was South Korea or if it was Japan.
In terms of lowest birth rate, or?
Yeah, there's some rumor about them being open to having people come to the country. Essentially.
I think that's just a myth.
That's just a myth? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they have so I saw the meme on Instagram. I looked into it, it's fake. So
okay, great.
Or at least as far as I know,
okay,
it's fake. And basically people can have breeding visas and whatnot. Nah, that's not real.
Yeah, so it's utter BS at that point.
Yeah, it's BS. But I think some countries might be actually exploring something like this, where they will pay you to get married. Like getting married will
incentivizing marriage.
Incentivizing marriage and incentivizing childbirth. So that is something that I know countries are definitely exploring. But I don't know if the breeding visa, I think that's just bullshit. I personally think it's just bullshit.
Yeah.
Even if it's real, I don't think it's a good idea.
No, it's probably not a good idea. Probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's many different factors associated with that as well, right? So now you're sort of, I mean, as human beings, I think we've mixed ourselves with cultures and all that as we've sort of evolved. But then, like, if a foreigner comes, I don't know, say to India and makes kids with an Indian woman or an Indian man, that over time will change the fabric of what an Indian is, right?
Yeah.
In some sense. So I don't know if it takes away the uniqueness, is probably not the right word. It makes it more unique in a sense.
Yes.
But it makes it different from what it was before.
I agree. And there is an actual concept, I don't know if it's social science or something, but there's an actual concept called post-cultural society, where our human civilization reached to a point where culture doesn't actually matter anymore, or doesn't actually exist in a sense that we have today as vividly. Because imagine one day, like, international transport is just so convenient now.
Right.
Everyone's just mixing. Borders basically disappear. Cultures start intermixing so much that it's basically almost indistinguishable, or just slightly variable. You know, everyone's just used to each other.
Right.
So the sense of culture that is very distinct or very unique today probably won't happen in the far future. That's just an idea.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting to read about. Yeah.
For sure, because if you think about it that way, then there's not really much of a separation from a Malaysian and an Indian, or from a Japanese person and an American. We're just all going to be humans. I grew up on that side of the land on this planet. You grew up on this side of the land on this planet.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's about it, kind of thing. Which is kind of fascinating to think about. I mean, again, this is probably not even our grandkids' generation, maybe further away than that.
Hundreds of generations down the line, probably. Yeah.
Right.
Assuming we're all still here. But
Exactly. And there's no floating rock that falls on this planet and just...
Or we don't obliterate ourselves.
Right. That too. I mean, there is the prospect of nuclear war, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah. You'd be surprised how little we need to actually cause extinction using nuclear weapons.
So I've heard as such. I've heard that we don't need much.
Yeah. Guess how much nuclear weapons we need to cause extinction level event.
As in, like,
how many nuclear bombs that we need to drop at one go to create?
Is it like under 20?
Close. From what I heard, it's around 200. I might need to fact check myself too, but this is what I've read so far, is that 200 is enough to cause a nuclear winter or a radiation fallout that's able
around the world
that's able to, like, disrupt a lot of important supply chains and whatnot, and it will probably put us into a dystopian state, a dark ages. And now, considering that we have at some point 24,000 nuclear weapons back in the Cold War, now I think decommissioned a bunch of them. I think now we only have like 14,000.
Yeah, I think I've heard this conversation had somewhere where they were talking about the number of nuclear weapons being lower than it was during the Cold War.
I think it's like almost halved. Almost.
Right, but it's still high enough to where it is a concern.
Yeah, I mean, we can destroy the Earth, like, if considering, let's assume the 200 nuclear weapons is the right number. We can destroy the Earth like
In no time.
Many times over.
Right.
With the amount of nuclear weapons.
Right. Because it's not just one country that has it. There's multiple countries that have it, right? So someone goes rogue and is like, yeah, fuck this, fuck the earth and everything.
You need everything to go well for something to work well, but you need one fuck up to fuck up everything. So.
Right. Yeah, because I think it was South Korea that someone was talking about, where I think the birth rate is so low to where it's concerning on another level.
Yeah, I remember reading it like at some point.
It's 4%, I think was the number. I'll fact check myself on this too, but
for me, what I found funny was because some countries use birth rate index to measure, and an index usually doesn't go below 1, right? But South Korea is, I think, the first country that their birth rate index went below 1.
Wow.
So that means, by normal standards of measure, they're below a unit of 1 in the birth rate index. That's crazy. It's crazy, like 0.99 something.
Right.
But that's an insane thought. So.
Yeah, because essentially what will happen is you will have a lot of old people there, right?
Population crisis, yeah.
Yeah, and I think in some sense, I mean, again, I could be wrong about this, but every country will experience that at some point.
Yeah.
If you think about how culture works, in a sense.
Yeah. That's an important point. Yeah.
Because oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So there's one interesting experiment that I loved when I was young, which is they call it Universe 25, the nickname people gave online. Basically, this is also known as the Red Utopia experiment.
The Red Utopia experiment?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, they have a large cage with a lot of mice or rats. I forgot. I think it's mice. They have like a lot of apartments where rats and mice can live in. They have unlimited food, the bedding's always changed, unlimited water. They want to see what happens. Their population rise rapidly. Up to a certain point, they start stagnating, and they saw quite interesting behavior. They found that social hierarchy has formed, where the big one or certain color group starts oppressing another group, or at least that's how that article used the word. And there is another thing that happened is they found delinquency happening, where people just fight for fun. They're not fighting over food, and they're just fighting for the sake of fighting.
Right.
They also found that mice and rats are getting more lazy. They just want to sleep. They just want to eat.
Because they have their basic resources.
Yes, they don't want
needs
to.
met.
Yeah. And they found shut-in behavior. They just sleep and they hide in their side of the burrow. They don't want to interact with other people. And they found that the birth rate is decreasing. And then they also found something interesting. Of course, this already happens in nature, but they found an increase in homosexuality in the rats and mice. Increased levels of it. So the reason why people named it Universe 25 online, I don't think this is the actual name for it. I think but the actual experiment, I'm pretty sure, is called like the rat or mice wonderland or utopia experiment. But the Universe 25 is because they allegedly they repeated the experiment 25 times. It ended the same way.
I see.
They all died.
They all died.
Yes. So, of course, it's not to say this is going to happen to us.
Right.
But a lot of people are probably saying that that's what's probably going to happen. But I don't think it's that simple, especially since humans have entertainment. I think that's something that the rats are probably lacking. Just like how you probably heard of the drug experiment, where they put a rat in a cage, a bottle, 2 bottles, 1 water, 1 drug. And then the
I feel like I've heard about this vaguely.
In psychology
maybe
class,
I've heard about something else.
Yeah. In psychology class, they probably talk about it. But the boring cage, the lonely rat or the lonely mice will drink the drug bottle more than the water bottle. But when they put a rat or mice in a utopia, again another utopia, but this time they actually have a lot of fun. They have a lot of toys and obstacles, and it's quite big, and a lot of other rats to mate and even be friends with. They rarely touch the drug bottle. They take more of the water bottle. So I feel like humans have a lot of variety of options. So I don't think humans will end the way the Universe 25 did. But it is an interesting thing to think about, especially considering how many countries already started losing their population. In a sense. And I feel like the population crisis is more of an age and generation issue rather than a population collapse where people just started dying off.
something that's driven a lot by choice in a sense. And sure, again, it could be governmental regulations and rules that sort of affect things as well.
Yeah.
In the case of China, where they had the one-child policy.
Yes.
And then now they're having to reverse that. And,
yeah, exactly.
Right? So some of that, again, is out of the control of the people's hands. But what I mean by a personal choice is, as culture evolves, I think...
people just choose
not to have kids.
Yeah.
Which, again, to each your own. It's up to you if you want to have a kid or not.
Because some find it difficult, some find it troublesome,
right.
some just find it too expensive. Some people, I ask a lot of people, do you think having a child is a luxury? They're like, hell yeah. I'm struggling paying my own rent. How can I like have a child?
Right.
I'm like, true. In a lot of countries, apparently, especially in developed countries, this is
the case, yeah. Because especially I think in the US, I think that's a major cause for concern, right? Because with prices skyrocketing so much, would you even want to build a family here? Like, I mean, that's the thought I'd have as an international person who is considering wanting to live here. But when I think about what I want for my future, is that possible over here in that sense, right? Yeah. It's just a thought. I mean, again, like, it's not something that I've given a ton of thought, like in the sense of, is the US, how all of that works together. I've thought about it, but not enough to where I know what I'll do.
Of course, yeah.
But it's been thoughts. I just found something that says it's Calhoun and his researchers created a series of rat utopias, calling it behavioral sink. Is that the same thing?
Yes. They call it a behavioral sink. Basically, the sink part is where they say that everyone's behavior will eventually reach that point. So that's the sink. And this behavioral sink is the valley that people fall through, which is less likely to thrive with people, the isolationism, the individualism, the conflict and the social hierarchy, the discrimination. That's the behavioral thing that they're talking about. But once again, I need to clarify, they're talking about rats and mice, not humans.
Right. But there's a huge difference because we can think on a much wider spectrum compared to
and we also have wider things to do compared to those rats. They probably don't even have toys in there, so I don't know what.
Right. Yeah. Because the other interesting thing, I think, in the sense is how much of it is motivated by personal need, right?
Yes.
That's one thought. The secondary thought I have about what you mentioned earlier, I forget, was it about the rat in the rat's context or if it was something else, but it some sense reminded me of the need of community as human beings. Because we're all social creatures at the end of the day, and you can't be in isolation forever. You just can't.
Even solitary animals need to mate once in a while to reproduce.
Right, exactly. And I think... let me ask you this before I go into that.
Sure.
Are you aware of like self-development spaces on the internet?
Yes.
Generally speaking?
Yeah, self-help, self-development.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the term called monk mode?
Yes, but I'm not quite sure what that is. Do you mind elaborating on that?
Sure. Generally, some people talk about this... philosophy is probably not the right word, but this thing called going monk mode, where for some portion of your life you just are dedicated to you, like taking care of yourself and your work. Don't give a shit about anything that's happening outside.
Oh yeah,
don't socialize. Don't do any of that. I mean, like, sure, whatever experiences
the
you
Sigma
need
Mill
to
grind set sort of thing. Yeah.
Right, in some sense. So people talk about the monk mode and just dialing down on yourself and sort of figuring your shit out and fixing what needs to be fixed and yada yada yada. I was reading an interesting post by, I don't know if you've heard of this podcaster named Chris Williamson.
I heard about him, but I don't know him.
Yeah, he's from the UK. He now lives in Austin. But anyway, sort of an interesting thing about how you can't really go monk mode for a long amount of time. At some point, you will start to feel the need for people in your life.
Yeah, I agree because I tried that.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, but at some point you need people because you're not going to...
It's very unhealthy, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, it's very unhealthy. Like, I can see how it can be helpful because it gives you the opportunity to just dial down and focus on some things. Because as human beings, I think, and again, this is a larger conversation to be had, I guess, about mental health and how we see things in today's world. But we're seeking that next distraction. And I think what this does is, in some sense, eliminates all distractions for all intents and purposes, so where you're able to just focus on yourself, fix yourself, whatever that may mean, to each individual, and just, coming out of it being a better person, if you will.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But again, I think you can't be there forever. It just is not possible.
It's unhealthy. Most people who are isolationists are usually the most prone to being depressed.
Right.
Yeah, so I feel like, especially, that is one of the troubling issues that I also think about a lot, which is children when they grow up. Because when I was young, I can't even talk to waiter or waitresses to order something. That's how socially anxious I was, and I realized that over time people can change and grow out of it.
Yes.
But I also noticed a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who the more they grow up, the more they hate people in a sense, or just don't like to interact with people much.
Yeah.
They feel drained by it. But personally, I feel like it's more of a habit thing. It's similar to working out. Some people say working out makes you more tired, but once people get used to it, they don't.
Yeah.
But of course, different people, different opinion. But
right.
I feel like social intelligence is definitely a skill that needs to be taught. Not just emotional intelligence, but social intelligence is the most crucial thing in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think in some sense, once you're able to develop that social intelligence, it will also help develop that emotional intelligence in a sense, right?
It's connected. Yeah.
It's connected. Like your ability to empathize with someone or sympathize with someone or to understand what someone might be feeling in that moment all comes from your ability to interact with people. Because if you're not interacting with people, you're not going to know shit.
Exactly.
It's as simple as that.
Exactly, yeah.
Sure, are you going to make mistakes? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You're not going to be perfect in how you understand someone, or if you're understanding the way that, if you're understanding enough to understand their problems.
Yeah.
I said that in a very convoluted way, but essentially, to bring that down to the singular point we were making just now, both of those are connected, so it's helpful to teach both. There's this interesting idea I read about the fact that emotional intelligence is not actually a psychological... It's not a psychologically determined value. I don't know if that's the right phrasing there, but apparently it was first... I guess they didn't use that phrase to sort of quantify what we associate necessarily with emotional intelligence. Allegedly, it was a journalist that came up with the idea of emotional intelligence. That in itself is kind of fascinating as well, because now everybody's talking about emotional intelligence, but when you think about it, it wasn't even a psychologist that sort of started. I mean, I'll just fact check myself right now.
Go ahead, yeah.
What was it again? Journalist. Emotional intelligence.
But yeah, I mean, I also find it very interesting because as I said, I think intelligence is the only way that human can progress, and humans' hardware is so limited right now that in terms of our brain hasn't changed for the past hundreds of thousands of years, or maybe thousands of years in terms of evolution. But our software is constantly changing. The knowledge we have, the ideas, the values, the level of abstraction keeps increasing.
Right.
But the hardware is still the same.
Right.
But we also have something called collective intelligence, where we can share, we can teach, we can correct each other, we can verify each other. So I feel like right now, the greatest source of intelligence that we have isn't AI.
Right.
At least not yet.
Oh, yeah.
That's debatable. But I feel like it's the collective human intellect is our greatest source of intelligence right now. The collective human intelligence.
Right.
And I
People
feel like
coming together and sort of.
Yes. And I feel like as much as people see, there's United Nations, there's a lot of the International Space Station and whatnot, I still feel like in terms of international collaboration for research and large-scale problem solving, countries helping another countries to, actively helping another country to get out of poverty, to improve their infrastructure, it's not up to par, in my opinion.
Right. There's still a lot more room for improvement in that sense.
A lot. This is something I heard from some of my friends, which is honestly very mind-blowing to me, which is that the United States allegedly has enough food and resources in terms of produce and meat to feed the whole world. But because they have so much, that if they actually do that, it will collapse the world's food market, because countries will start relying, and the prices will be so cheap. Other countries would probably lose their business for food, certain foods. So it will disrupt the entire food market. So United States have to regulate that. So a larger number of yield has to be burned. So that is obviously one thing is unsustainable. I'm not talking about waste in terms of you can't finish a meal. I'm talking about literally large amounts of raw produce
that doesn't even get on anybody's table.
No. Yeah. That's what's shocking to me. And I feel like that is one of the examples. Another, which is what we talked about, the population issue, or the lack of understanding in between countries. Those are large-scale systematic issues that only large-scale collaboration can solve. These are not something that a country alone or a few groups of individuals can solve.
Right. It needs concerted effort in that direction from multiple different directions. Sort of like multiple different directions walking towards the same goal.
Yes.
In a sense. I found something over here, and there's many different there's many different links that talk about things. The origins of the emotional intelligence theory sort of evolved from a psychologist, but then it was coined by wait, hold on. Let me see. I'll sift through this a little further and put up like a note on the episode itself. But anyway, regardless, I think it is still an important factor that we need in our lives to be able to understand a little better.
Like, just for example, I think that's very, very interesting, because a lot of new terms are coined by literature that is not even from that field. So for example, the word meme. What are your thoughts when you hear the word meme?
You think about something on social media that's
making people laugh,
yeah.
Actually, the word meme, at least from what I know, is coined by Richard Dawkins, an evolutionary biologist, to talk about how they can, how concepts and ideas and values are passed down and evolved and spread. If I'm not mistaken, but you can probably fact check that where the word meme originated from. But I'm pretty sure it's from Richard Dawkins. Yeah.
The word meme itself is a neologism coined by Richard Dawkins.
Oh, yeah.
Origins from his 1976 book called The Selfish Gene.
Yes. That's a very good book to read about evolution.
Gotcha. Fascinating. You seem like someone who's generally quite curious about a lot of things.
Oh, yes. Yes, I am. People tell me that. Yeah, I try to read as much as possible, but I have a lot of books on my shelf that most of them I just read halfway. A bad habit, but yes, some of them I do finish occasionally, but most of them is like half read.
Is that because it's not interesting to you anymore?
No, it's just probably, I don't want to quote it, but I probably short attention span. I just sort of either forget about it completely, or I just get distracted and I just forget about it.
I see. Yeah. So it's not necessarily a thing where the book is not interesting to you anymore and you stop. It's just there's a lot of other shit that you're focusing on.
I would say that's exactly. Or maybe sometimes it will go stale. I will, in the sense that I haven't read it for a week,
right?
And I keep thinking about it. I want to read it, but eventually that idea of reading it just
goes away.
And then maybe next time I'll be like, oh, this idea is interesting. I read it before. Where did I read it from? Look back. Oh, this book. I'll continue reading about it. So because I feel like every knowledge we have is connected in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like what we talk about consciousness and sentience of AI. How can you prove that? Well, it's connected to the idea of animals. How can you prove animals are sentient or not? By the way, the same biologist that I talked about that coined the idea that humans are the extreme, what makes us humans the extreme. It's important to know that a lot of, at least zoologists and animal biologists and scientists, they already proved that a lot of animals have language, complex language even. They have feelings and emotions in many different ways. So in terms of behavior, they already exhibit something like that. So how can you determine whether they have or do not have sentience? You know what I'm saying? They have a pain response.
Yeah.
In a similar way humans have.
Right.
So whether or not our AI has it, that's still a question for another time.
Right.
But all I know is psychology and consciousness, this idea stemmed from behavioral science first. Psychology never existed before behavioral science because we start by investigating behavior before we get into the thoughts.
Right.
So I think that's a very good point to start from if we want to answer whether or not something that is sentient or not.
Right.
How does it respond to it?
Right. Because the example I can think of when we were talking about animals expressing emotion, I was talking to one of my classmates in the grad program in forensic science. She grew up on a farm with essentially a lot of cattle. And when calves were taken away from the mothers, like, I think the term she used was ballaring, if I'm not mistaken. Essentially the cows crying for their kids in a sense. Yeah. They would do that a lot, especially during the times where they would take the calves away.
And they would have a period of grief.
Right.
They will go through the 5 stages of grief. So it's very interesting. And we even saw that they have this experiment where they did it to a lobster. So a lobster comes out for food every time, to look for food, right? So what they do is every time it comes out, it zaps it. It zaps it, it goes back in. So it develops, eventually it obviously does not want to come out anymore because it's very uncomfortable for it. But they use a antidepressant and an anxiety drug that we give to humans and dogs. Yes, they have meds for dogs. And they give it to the lobster, it started coming out and explore again. So that proves that they have some level of brain chemistry similar to humans enough that they probably have some sort of anxiety or fear that they can develop and condition into their experience. So whether or not they're sentient, I can't answer that. But they exhibit behavior that would be consistent if someone has experience.
Right,
so, yeah, that's all I'll say for that. Yeah.
This is maybe a devil's advocate sort of question, potentially. How much of that could be us projecting what we know?
Like anthropomorphize, right?
Yes.
That's a good question. Like I said, it's a question we can not answer. The honest answer is we don't know.
Right.
But based on evidence, it's similar to like the idea of whether humans are special. Like, how do you know I'm sentient or conscious? We don't know. There's a philosophy called solipsism. And solipsism states that you, as far as you know, are the only one that is conscious in your perspective. Everyone else is not. So a solipsist would think that everyone else is just a flesh of meat walking around that has the behavior that you have. But obviously, just like how history has proven, like, we thought the sun revolves around the earth, we proved that the earth revolves around the sun, and the planet Earth is actually common. Planets are everywhere, orbiting their stars. Then we thought our star is very, very special. Then we realized a star is orbiting countless other stars in a galaxy. And then we thought, for a long time, we thought our galaxy is normal. Oh no, it's special.
Yeah.
But it turns out the stars that we see that is very far away are actually entire galaxies.
Right.
Same thing. We thought we ourselves are special, but it turns out you have the same biology, same neurology, and very similar psychology as me.
Yeah.
And we found that it's consistent that from where you're from, the people who are from there have similar behaviors or beliefs or whatever. Like if you're born in a Buddhist country, you're more likely to become Buddhist.
Yeah.
That's why there's a quote saying like we are a smear or mosaic of everyone we met, right? So in a sense, science sort of hates the idea of specialty. Yeah, that science just proves that no, you're nothing special.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is something we can also hold into consideration of consciousness. I cannot say that all animals have it, but let's start simple. Let's start with our closest cousins, primates, right? Then we slowly move to other mammals based on behavior and their neuroscience. And since especially nowadays we can start quantifying qualitative experiences, right, or qualitative measurements.
Yeah.
That could probably bring more answers to light, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. Because in some sense, I think the essence, in some sense, that really, I guess, fuels all of this is curiosity, right? Like
yes.
How curious humans are to where they want to explore all of these things. And in some sense, I guess, having your basic necessities met can fuel you to do these things. Because if you don't have food to eat or a roof to live under, all you're going to worry about is that.
Yes.
If you're in bad health, all you're going to worry about is bad health. But if those things are checked off the list in terms of your ability to live, you're going to be curious about many different things and sort of explore. And the reason why I bring that up, as I'm saying this, it's sort of connecting in my head at least. We started off talking about AI and how where we are in terms of its evolution into its existence with humans and so on. I've referenced this podcast a lot before, so people who've maybe heard a few episodes would be like, oh, this episode again that he's talking about. But have you heard of who Naval Ravikant is by any chance?
No, not really.
Okay, he's an angel investor. Let me put it this way. He used to be quite big on the Twitter space. Not Twitter Spaces, but in Twitter.
Yeah.
And he was on the Joe Rogan Experience like 5 years back at this point, I think. And he was sort of talking about how eventually humans will get to a point where we're all just creative beings because all of our general needs will be met. Like, robots will take over all the other things. Again, I'm probably paraphrasing a lot here, so if someone wants to listen to that episode, I'll definitely recommend that you do. You can seek it out. It's on YouTube, Spotify. Yep. I mean, Joe Rogan doesn't need a plug from me. I don't know why I'm putting it that way, but it is that he was talking about that idea of how at some point we'll all be creative beings where we don't have to worry about these other sort of things that we worry about right now, because those will be taken over by robots or whatever it might be. And again, I'm paraphrasing hugely here. But I guess that's sort of, again, I'm no psychologist, but that's sort of the foundation in some sense of who we are, right? Because when we were kids, at least you seem like a very curious person too, so this probably we'd probably both relate in this sense. But I think as kids, generally kids are quite intrigued by everything.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They'll do the dumbest shit ever because they're just intrigued. They want to know what's happening around them. But as we grow older, I hate to put it this way, but life just sort of beats you into a certain pulp to where you start worrying about other things, and your curiosity is essentially just, I don't want to use the word die away, but they don't become a matter of your focus
diminished,
anymore. Right, they diminish in a sense because you're not thinking about it anymore. You're thinking about paying your bills, getting your job done, just making sure you do well enough at work, maintaining relationships, yada yada yada, which those all have value. I'm not saying that they don't, but they definitely take away from your ability to be curious in a lot of ways. So yeah, I think in some sense, doing all of these things will, again, to add to your point earlier of that evolution of human beings, where this is more integrated. He sort of talked about that idea too, which is fascinating. But
it is very fascinating, yeah.
Yeah.
And I personally do agree, because we're technically doing that now.
Right.
Because back in the day, we are in more need of manual labor.
Right.
And then at some point, we need more intellectuals. And most of the intellectual scholars and most of the people who are artists tend to be rich, or the elites, the nobles. The peasants can't even read. 60% of the population at some point couldn't read. And back then, and the further down you go, even more can read. Nowadays, everyone's a scholar. So that's something I learned in humanities class. That's very fascinating to me. But technically, you can see that already happening. More people are taking more art classes, more people taking design classes. People are doing more of what they want than what the world needs or what they need. Or some people just don't care about, this implication is that my job's for a lower pay. They don't care. They just want to do what they want. Right. And I think that's a very good thing. But also, down the line, there's probably going to be long-term implications. Right.
Then again, I think there's a balance and an imbalance in the sense of making sure that your bills are paid, but also doing what you like to do. And that's going to take a lot of exploration at the end of the day, right? Because you're not going to get there right away. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Do you know the term ikigai? Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, I've heard the term. I've not learned enough about it in depth, but I know that it's a Japanese philosophy on like, is it 3 or 5 different criteria for finding what you're...
Yeah, I think it's 4. Like
okay.
It's a Venn diagram.
It's funny how I said 3 and 5. But
yeah, in between.
Right.
Yeah. But I think you should, if for those who don't know, you should definitely look it up, especially as the Venn diagram. It's easier to understand that way. But they usually ask 4 questions.
Mm-hmm.
What you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what you get paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And the ikigai, or the reason to be, if you directly translate it, is the center where all of those align.
Right.
And I'm fascinated by this idea because it's true. You can still contribute no matter what. For example, BTS. People think, oh, BTS is just a singer group. A lot of my K-pop haters friends, they say it's just another K-pop group. They're not contributing to the world. I'm like, no, they are actively creating songs that people can relate to, and songs have been known to help people express themselves, release stress when they sing or listen to it. It's a good leisure. It's contributing indirectly, whether or not you like it or not. And also, BTS also went to United Nations, and they made something called Love Yourself campaign, where they actively try to promote mental health and of depression, the awareness of depression, because this is also what shocks me. Apparently, in some cultures and communities, they don't believe in mental health issues. They don't believe that there's something called mental health disorder. They just think you're weak, suck it up. And that's
just drink a cup of water, you'll be alright.
Yeah. Just get good, bro. So it's like so sort of thing. So I find it very shocking, and I realize that no matter what field you go to, whether or not you think it's very valuable or not, I feel like if you're creative enough, you're still contributing.
Yeah. I think because of the way we measure success in this world,
very, very, very flawed. Yeah. Skewed.
Right. It sort of is measured by financial wealth, in some sense, physical wealth. The car you drive.
The number of people that you influenced.
Right.
Or that you influence. Yeah, your followers.
Right, your followers.
Your fame.
Right. Your partner. All of that sort of stuff, right? Like a lot of those things sort of are metrics for success that we use in today's day and age, but I think as time goes on, one would only hope that those things change as well.
Agree.
Because in some sense, I think when you think about it, success is very much an individual thing.
Yes.
Right?
Very, very much so, yeah.
And I think I don't know if I'll say our, because I feel like we're a little distant in terms of age, but generally speaking, I think at least my generation and lower, I'd like to think that we're waking up to this idea of success being individual, and that we're not so concerned by meeting standards of society. That again is quite arbitrary, right? Like society was like, okay, you should have a well-paying job, and again, granted, yes, you do need those things to be able to live every day. Not saying that you don't.
And it's also just convenient to have more money.
Right. Because again, like in the world that we live in today, with taxes increasing and inflation and all of that, the more money you have, the better it is. So sure, like that can be a metric for success. But then will success make you happy is also like a huge question, right? 9 times out of 10, well, maybe not 9 times out of 10, but depends on each individual. It can be different, right? Like for some people, having that huge mansion, but you're living by yourself, is that really happiness?
Yeah, this is a very interesting philosophy topic because I think people should watch this video by Vsauce too. Okay. Where he talks about.
Who is Vsauce, by the way? If you could just.
You know that's a meme of this bald guy that says, "Hey, Vsauce, Michael here." I don't know if you've seen that. Basically, Vsauce has 3 channels. Okay. I don't know if
I feel like I've heard the term Vsauce.
It's a meme. He's everywhere. But Vsauce, you can look it up if you want. But Vsauce, there's Vsauce 1, 2, and 3. I don't know if they're brothers or I think they're friends. But all of 3 are intellectual channels.
I see.
Yes, they talk about different, quite random topics too.
Okay.
But they're often quite abstract, intellectual, yet concrete. It's very weird. But that's why I like them so much. But Vsauce too made a video about does happiness make you unhappy? And I also realized this in a lot of cultures and a lot of ancient philosophies and religions is that they often tell you not to pursue too much, not to be greedy and whatnot, or like to control your temptations
and your desires,
but also to be able to face discomfort and pain.
Yeah.
And for example, in Stoicism or Buddhism, they're all about the self-cultivation, building yourself, fortifying yourself. But if you take it the wrong way, you probably just think about becoming a monk, or becoming Sigma male grind set. You don't care about people, you don't care about pain, no gain. That's probably a wrong thing.
Right.
I think that's...
There's extremes, there's negative extremes to that as well.
I feel like that's like a misconception. If you look deeper into it, it's a misconception. In fact, Stoicism hates apathy. But a lot of people think that a Stoic person doesn't care. No, apathy is seen as a negative thing in Stoicism. So, in Buddhism they call it nirvana. Right. In Stoicism they call it eudaimonia, or Greek philosophy eudaimonia, and it just means well-being. And it's kind of clear that they're emphasizing on a state of mind that is just well, not happy, not sad, just well. And you can also see that a lot, especially all the older, wiser people, they don't need much. They just want to be well. They just want to be okay. And they also emphasize that it's okay not to be okay. There's these simple things that I feel like it's overlooked. And sometimes in the social media it gets cringy and cheesy where they say it too much. Like, oh, it's okay not to be okay. But it's definitely an important thing to get out there. And have you heard of the guy named Viktor Frankl?
Yes. Austrian...
yes.
Psychologist?
Legend. Yeah, he's a legend.
Yeah.
I respect him a lot, especially his autobiography.
Have you read Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah, but like I said,
Partly.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
it's a very good book.
Very good book. Definitely encourage everyone to read it. But he says, this is the most important quote that stuck to me, is that the pursuit of happiness thwarts happiness. It's because people want to be happy. That's what makes them unhappy.
Yeah.
It's also the idea that the need for freedom is what... we're trapped by the idea that we need freedom. It's very paradoxical, it's an oxymoron statement, but if you think about it, it's true. When you're cleaning a room, you're already cleaning a room, but when your mom tells you to do it, you just don't want to do it, man. Yeah. Why are you telling me what to do?
Right.
We're controlled by the idea that we need freedom. We're controlled by the idea that we need to feel good.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a very important idea and concept that people need to look into, because I feel like it really helped me out a lot.
Right.
And it helps a lot with my family too, especially when they looked into it. It helped them out a lot.
Yeah.
So, people will soon find that there's a lot of connections between all the ancient philosophies as well as the modern philosophies of what Viktor Frankl said. So, eudaimonia, just be happy. That's the highest level of mental achievement for Stoics and a lot of Greek philosophers. Just be well. Eudaimonia, well-being.
Yeah.
So, yeah, nirvana as well. It's not a state of happiness or whatnot. It's just bliss.
Yeah.
It's just okay.
A sense of contentment in the world that you live in.
Enough. Yeah.
Right.
And if you think about it, that also gets back to psychology and neuroscience. And that's the difference between serotonin and dopamine.
Correct.
Dopamine makes you want something, anticipate something, drive for something, which is a good thing. I'm not telling you to cut out dopamine, you'll die.
Right. You need your dopamine.
You need it, otherwise Parkinson's or whatever. But serotonin is an inhibitor. It makes you feel like it's time to stop, it's enough, you're fulfilled. So you see what I mean? There's a difference. There's a clear difference between being happy and enough, content. Even physiologically, there is a difference. Yeah. So people can't distinguish true happiness and joy versus pleasure or versus just being content. Yeah. So I think this is an important thing people need to start looking at, because I feel like, we all fall prey to that, but we avoid certain feelings, like what we said in the beginning. We avoid certain feelings, we avoid certain aspects of ourselves because it's uncomfortable. But in the end, just like what unconscious psychology shows, that the more we try to suppress certain things, it bites us back in the ass in the future. Yeah. We tend to project, we get aggressive, we become sad or depressed, we don't feel like we're ourselves. So I feel like it's something important.
For sure. And I think to add to your idea of the happiness and contentment thing that you were talking about, pigs are literally happy in shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But for us as outsiders, you're like, pigs, damn, like, why are they so happy in shit? Like, they're dirty animals for that.
Yeah.
And similarly, I think you can extrapolate that to many other things in the human experience, right? Like,
agree, yeah.
It's funny how I've sometimes heard this phrase thrown around a lot, in that people who have less are often the ones who are most content with what they have.
Less is, in a way, less is more.
Less is more in a sense, yeah. Like, sometimes I don't know why I'm thinking of this example, but I just have this vague image of a construction worker in India where I was living, and just how content they seem with what they have. Maybe that's an image I'm making up, because I can't really draw that to another memory that I have. But anyway, my point being is that I think because of how materialistic the world is, you can sort of get into this hamster wheel of like constantly seeking something to make you happy. But then the more you realize and understand, you get to a point where you're like, oh, I can just choose to be happy.
Yes,
right?
in a way.
In a way.
And then sometimes, of course, there are some factors that make you unable to choose to be happy.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is not discounting that in any way.
Yeah. But it's just a disclaimer.
Just a disclaimer, yes.
Just a disclaimer. No, we're not saying mental health is not a thing. Just saying that it's more complicated than just it's okay not to be okay.
Right. It's a nuanced conversation. And of course, like, just sort of add to your point. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but
no worries.
Clinical problems exist.
Yes.
Right? Clinical depression, clinical anxiety, those are all things. And situational depression, situational anxiety is also a thing. We're not saying that isn't true. I think in some sense we're talking about how you could navigate the situational aspect of things.
Yes.
Right.
It's similar to like the different types of physical pain is a very good analogy, I would say. Some people say working out is very uncomfortable, very tiring, like when you're doing cardio, you can't breathe, or sweating in the heat, it's very uncomfortable. But those are not something that's going to kill you. It's not something that harms you. It's in fact good for you on the long run. But after your workout, you probably feel sore, but some people find it nice. And in fact, it is good for you. But once you go over that, you might injure yourself, like those bro science people that ego lifts and whatnot. So it's the same with, I feel like it's the same with mental health and emotion and thoughts. I feel like we need to find a way to navigate that, and it's obviously trickier because it's your mind. It's hard to grab your own hand or see your own eyes without a mirror. So it's definitely something that we need to learn to distinguish. Just discomfort that is helpful versus discomfort that is harmful.
Right.
And pain and discomfort that is helpful and harmful. That's why people often admire people who are able to do ultra marathons or do ice baths and all that. There's a reason why like society tend to put them in amazing at a pedestal. But I feel like in reality it's just inherent in all of us. It's just that not many of us are able to navigate through our own discomfort.
Yeah. The one person I'm thinking of right now is David Goggins.
Yes, he's the most classic example of that.
Right.
I would say he's the more extreme example.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Stay hard, motherfucker.
Yes.
Which, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think when you need that pump of motivation, that kick, works. I'm actually reading his book right now. The Can't Hurt Me.
Can't hurt me. Yes.
Yeah, I think
How's it? I haven't read that yet.
So far so good. I mean, dude's dealt with a lot of fucked up shit. You can say that. He talks about his experience. Do you want me to spoil it for you?
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say he talks about his upbringing in terms of how his father ran a skating rink, and in the outside world, his family seemed like a very well-to-do African American family, living in that time when, generally speaking, that community was not as affluent and so on. But then behind closed doors, this father treats them like shit. Like, he overworks his kids, he overworks his wife.
Abusive
family. And then he sort of talks about his mom and him running away from his father after a certain point, and then moving to a certain part of Indiana, I think it's called Brazil, Indiana, and dealing with racism. And he just talks about some of it. And at least this is my experience of reading, and I don't know if this is the same for you, but somewhere when I'm reading, I try to end up creating mental images of what's happening, and just thinking about like some of the things that he talks about is just kind of wild to think about.
It's hard to believe that actually happened, right?
Right. Because I think it's very easy to sort of just read it and be like, oh yeah, it's sad, but you can't really imagine what it might have been in that moment, right? You can empathize, sure, you can empathize, but only to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I won't spoil it any further, but it's a really fascinating read so far. I think I've crossed like chapter 3. The other good thing about that book, I think, in some sense, it's sort of like a self-help project in a sense, because after the end of every chapter, he has like a task for you to do.
Yes.
And one of the things he talks about is the accountability mirror, which I actually haven't done, but I'd be intrigued to do at some point.
If it happens.
If it helps, yeah, because some of it I'm like, oh, that seems a little too extreme. Essentially, what he's talking about is whatever you think about yourself negatively, put that on a sticky note, put that on your mirror. Look at it every single day, because that's going to help you develop thick skin. Like
Right.
Yes. So it's sort of like whatever
systemic desensitization in psychology, yeah.
So the sense of if you feel like you lack something, that's what you put on there. Or if you're not somewhere where you want to be.
Insecure about something.
Exactly.
You hate something about yourself.
Right, exactly. So it's sort of like putting that on a sticky note and then putting it on the mirror and looking at that every single day.
Too,
yeah. So it's fascinating, and I think
it also creates a sense of self-awareness more.
Right.
And makes you more, like accountability, that you're accountable of your own self.
Yes. Because you're, in that moment, you're forced to look at yourself for what you actually are. Because I think, as human beings, and we've all been there, like I don't think there's any shame in admitting to that. I know sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable for people to acknowledge that. But generally speaking, like I think we've all gone through our phases of shit where like, what am I doing with my life? Like, what the fuck is happening right now? Kind of thing. There's some level of, I guess, it's part of the journey to where you need to be able to accept the fact that you're in a pile of shit.
Yeah.
Because I think we sometimes try to distract ourselves by being like, no, but this is working out for me. No, but this is working out for me. Because I do that a lot.
Like, it is what it is, myself.
Right, it is what it is, or it's otherwise also kind of like...
That's just life.
That's just life. Such is life. Yeah, like, sure, maybe this didn't work out, but hey, I at least have this.
Toxic positivity.
In a sense.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Brushing it off. Just
right. Like, it'll be all right. We'll figure it out later. Don't worry about it. But it sort of brings to terms some of your own
actual drawbacks. Issues that you are just
suppressing
under the rug. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I'd love to see where the book goes, because I'm at the point where he's talking about getting into the Navy, getting into the SEALs. How he lost like
the rise is dying.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How he lost like the 106 pounds or whatever it was in 3 months. Yeah. Which I think is a little too extreme still. Like, wouldn't recommend.
Quite unhealthy. Yeah.
Quite unhealthy. Wouldn't recommend. But yeah. Anyway, all that to say, I think the fascination of improving yourself in some sense, it can feed many things, sometimes good things, sometimes bad things in a sense. Also because I think then there's this constant, and this is something that I struggle with, this constant sense of not being enough, to where you're like constantly trying to upgrade yourself.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, once I get to this point, I think I'll be good enough. But then you realize there's X, Y, and Z that still you need to solve.
Yes, and this brings back to the idea that we're trapped in the cycle.
Exactly. So it's this constant hamster wheel of you just
I think that's where like the term emotional intelligence really came in, right?
Yeah.
We really need to know when it's enough, when it's not enough.
Yeah. And I think the other important thing there is also how much of your worth do you put out in the world, right? Put out in the world as in how much of it do you expect?
Contribute.
No, I should rephrase what I said. What I mean is, how much of it are you expecting the world to... let me just rephrase that.
No, go ahead.
I think seeking that validation from the world is what I'm trying to get at.
Right. The need for recognition.
And I think, especially in the world that we live in today with social media and everything, I think we've all well, maybe that's a bit of a generalization. I probably shouldn't say we all, but in some sense, like, society has become hungry for likes and double taps and whatever else it may be.
Dopamine.
Right? Dopamine, right. And TikTok is a great soup for that, you know, like in terms of the regular hits of dopamine that you can get, TikTok or any sort of version of short form content, right? So,
yeah, agree.
Yeah, it's in some sense to say that technology is sort of bad, I think is also not the right way to look at it, because then you're like, does that mean then all the good things that we've had are also bad? No, right? So it's...
I feel it's a case-by-case scenario.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. Some things are good, some things are bad. I know we're sort of going a little long, and I think the battery's going to start running low soon. Mm-hmm. I do want to ask you this question because I'm quite intrigued. Mm-hmm. What do you make of it?
Go ahead.
I have this personal feeling that I think our brains have not evolved to live in the times that we live in.
Yes. I was about to say that, actually.
Okay.
Our brains are not made for social media. I was about to tell you that.
Right.
And our brains are not made for lights that are 24 hours, you know. Yeah. So that's why human sleep cycles are getting more and more cooked over time.
Right.
And yeah, I definitely agree. And we're not accustomed enough to be so variable in our identity. Yeah. We're not so accustomed to so many abstract concepts, meeting so many different kinds of people, and also especially the pace of change. We're not accustomed to that.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by our hardware is very severely outdated, and the only way we could fix that is through collective intelligence to hold each other accountable while we develop other tools like genetic engineering or AI, which is also both are things that I'm very interested in. So to improve human health and intelligence and well-being, as well as improve innovation faster.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think in some sense, so like I think improving your level of awareness will help you navigate those pitfalls of the lack of...
the psychological blind spots that you have.
Right. Because in some sense, I was thinking of a very good example the other day, but it's not coming to mind right now. Let's see. Something to do with how you can control your reaction to certain things. What was that?
If you're more aware of a certain behavior that you have, the more likely you can prevent that behavior. So that's why they say addictions come from cues and priming. So if your cue is every time let's say you drink, every time you're in the kitchen and you see the wine cabinet there, then you either remove all the wine or wine cabinet, or you just don't enter the room.
Right.
You remove the cue, like one of the processes that trigger the addiction. And so self-awareness is definitely part of the intelligence part. Right. And I realized intelligence is not just about what you do with the information. It's also about what information you have, the inputs. Yes. So that's why what you're aware of, the inputs, and also, of course, what you do with it, the processing part, and then what you do, the output part. So, but one important quote that I also learned from Jungian psychology or the unconscious psychology, I think it's from Jungian psychology, is that
Carl Jung,
yeah. So the more you try to hide the shadow, the darker it gets. So it's like trying to hide.
Hide it from yourself.
Yeah. So that's why the only way you can get rid of a shadow is not hiding it.
It's running towards it.
It's either not to say running towards it, but to bring it to light.
Bring it to light. Right.
So basically, be aware of it to acknowledge the situation, and that's usually the first step to any problem. Is to frame the problem. That's why you see any self-help or leadership camp or whatever, they always say frame the problem or look for the problem first. Diagnostics is always the first. Yeah. So first frame the problem, find out the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's fascinating. Like.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking.
Because I think in some sense, as the world evolves, we also have to evolve, but we don't evolve as quickly as the world.
In a societal, like a social regard, and also the psychological way that it's evolving very, very fast, but physically we're not.
Right.
And so that's why I think genetic engineering and also of course social engineering. So, by the way, social engineering has a bad connotation. They think it's related to hacking or manipulating people. No, social engineering just means using social science to construct a social situation in a certain way. That's why hackers use that or scammers use that. Social engineering, you're engineering a social situation, you know. So I feel like
use an example there.
So for example, they found out that let's say you want to make a friend. It's you either offer them something. People think you give them something. That's how you make friends, right? But they also found that asking them for something, asking for help, usually makes them like you more.
Yeah.
For example, that's just an example. Or scammers would try to act as a professional and show authority and confidence to trick you into thinking, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, so I need their help, and then they scam you. So that's social engineering. So what I mean by genetic engineering and also just normal engineering in general, as well as social engineering, is because we need to construct social situations that, for example, promote physical well-being, like constructing more national parks. That's why, who is it? Teddy Roosevelt. Congrats to him. He's doing a great job. And then what's it called? Making situations where people are more likely to socialize, improve their social intelligence, make situations where people are more likely to read, you know, less of social media, for example. So that's social engineering. You're engineering the situation, the social aspect of the situation. That's social engineering. So I feel like social engineering, genetic engineering, and also, of course, technological and machine learning engineering is the key to solving a lot of our problems. Human problems that I told you, human problems we don't know how to solve. So, and of course, collective human intelligence is the best way to go right now. The best tool we have right now. Right.
Let's bring it to a close with that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's quite a while now.
No, it's all good. I mean, I could keep going. I don't think the camera can. I don't have a spare battery on me. But yeah, thank you so much, Robert. I really appreciate it.
It's really an honor to be here. Yeah.
I appreciate that, because this for me has been the adjective that I'm thinking of right now is quite stimulating in a very good way.
Yeah, I enjoy this conversation a lot.
I'm glad.
Even off camera, let's talk more.
For sure. I agree. We should talk more. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Andrew. Albert, I appreciate it. I guess I was thinking of Andrew Huberman. Anyway, and to those of you listening and watching, thank you so much. We will see you guys next time.